it's great experience for people, not just a question of the travel, because anybody can get on a flight and go somewhere if they can afford it, but actually to go for a few months or a couple of years and live somewhere and make friends and experience totally different culture.
Most pilots don't understand what career opportunities are available in the world of aviation. They're making career decisions based on advice from friends or posts on internet forums, meaning they are taking huge risks with their livelihood without having all the details. This podcast was created to help you understand the aviation industry so you can find your dream job. Let's get ready for Pushback. Here's your host and my dad, Nick Fialka.
Hey, pilots, what's up? It's Nick Fialka. You found another awesome interview episode of Ready for Pushback, and here we are. Brookfield Aviation is our topic today, and I'm talking to the CEO, Mr. David George. We had a real fun conversation. This is such an interesting company. It's a little bit different. They do pilot recruiting. They are financing company. They're an aircraft leasing company. They do lots and lots of other things that are different in aviation. For my international friends that listen to this podcast, really worth considering reaching out to David. If you're a pilot looking for some good flying, maybe you already have a type rating in an Airbus or a Boeing or something cool, David is a person that could probably use your experience. I think you're going to like this conversation. I really did. So sit back and relax. And last but not least, let's have a quick word from our sponsors, because without them, we wouldn't have this awesome podcast. Hey, pilot, did you just get a new conditional job offer? Are you getting out of the military and going to move your family across the country? Are you going to move in base somewhere, or are you going to go out to find that second home that you've been looking for? Well, I want you to stop right now, pick up the phone, and call Marty and the team at Trident Home Loans. It's an organization that's run by pilots. They understand pilot pay. They understand contracts. They understand military. They have the best VA loans in the United States. Marty and his team have been doing mortgages for years. They've been doing my mortgages for years. I trust him and his team more than any other organization. I challenge you to get a better deal anywhere else. Go ahead, reach out, get a mortgage quote, and then call Marty and his team. They will walk you through the process and show you how competitive their rates are. So go right now, tridenthomeloans.com, and check them out. Hey, pilot, I want to tell you about a great friend of the show, Timothy P. Pope. He's a financial planner, and he's completely focused on the professional pilot. He's the kind of guy you want to go to for real talk to help you figure out your financial future. With so many upgrades and so many transitions and so many things going on, you owe it to yourself to give him a call. He'll help you design and execute really smart financial planning strategies, whether it's retirement planning, investment management, military transition, tax planning. He's a great financial planning partner. Timothy P. Pope, CFP, helping professional pilots make the most out of life. Give him a shout. All the information's in the show notes. You should definitely tell him I told you to call. All right. I have with me today David George, the Chief Executive Officer from Brookfield Aviation International. And I found Brookfield on a LinkedIn search. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn looking for pilot jobs because I am interested in who's hiring what. And I came across Brookfield. I sent David's team a message, and I'm so interested in this organization because they hire a lot of pilots, not just for the US, but all around the world. And I think David has a really interesting story to tell. So David, thank you so much for joining us today. And would you please just tell the pilot listening about Brookfield and how you guys got started?
Yes, absolutely, Nick, and thanks for inviting me along. Yes, we at Brookfield Aviation, we set up 30 years ago in 1993. We have jobs for pilots literally all over the world. I mean, over the 30 years that we've been in business, we've hired more than 5,000 pilots for more than 200 different airlines. And that goes across the United States, Asia, Europe, Middle East, South America, literally all corners of the world. Not just pilots, incidentally. I mean, we also hire management people, engineers, and have got a number of other activities. But talking about the pilots, I mean, we've seen the ups and downs of the business over that particular time, from the downturn after 9/11, the downturn after or during the COVID crisis and various economic cycles. And we come through it, and I guess that some of these situations keep the business alive. So we're still here after all that time, and we've got lots and lots of jobs for pilots. We think that we do a very good job for the pilots and look after them, and we certainly do for the airlines as well.
Now, you guys have such a long track record, and you've seen a lot of ups and downs and each different market, right? You expanded across the globe. So as you have been sitting back and watching, what has your experience been from kind of everybody talking about an upcoming pilot shortage in the States and in Asia in 2017 and 18 to the actual post-COVID rush that we're seeing here in the States? Have you seen that worldwide?
It's not the same everywhere in the world, for sure. Certain parts of the world are a lot slower. Certainly, Asia has been a lot slower to recover than certain other places. The United States, I think, didn't really have the same level of downturn with COVID the rest of the world did in any case, and was the first to ramp up as well. So, I mean, it's no secret about a shortage of pilots in the States. That's part of our job is to help to address that. But we are seeing now, certainly this year, that in Europe the business is increasing and their pilots are more in demand. In Africa, there's a lot of new opportunities, and even in Asia now that China is opening up again, and Southeast Asia, that we're expecting a lot more business and a lot more demand coming from those regions.
Yeah, I can absolutely imagine the Chinese market and the Asian market has just been crushed because of the slow opening post-COVID. So that's really fascinating to watch. So when you're working, building clients and building agreements with organizations in the States, talk to me about what kind of airlines you're looking at or what kind of aviation companies.
Well, we supply a whole range of airlines. I mean, without mentioning names, some of the much bigger names, the big low-cost carriers, a number of 135 carriers as well, regional airlines, cargo carriers, all different aspects of the business. I mean, a general movement that goes from the regionals to the majors, and that obviously is creating a shortage with one end of the business, one end of the market, and certainly in the regional airlines are finding it a lot more challenging. But they all are, to be honest, Nick. I mean, even the majors are offering big incentives to join, very big signing on bonuses. I mean, one opportunity that we've got, for example, the airline is offering to pay up to 6 months wages for a pilot before they even join. So they can do two jobs at the same time and take two salaries as a way of getting people in as an incentive. It's crazy, really. I mean, the salary levels are going up and up as it does in auction and when there's such a shortage. But we're in the middle of it and we're doing our best. And in spite of everything, we're finding pilots for airlines, whether they're from within the United States or they may be Americans that have been working around the world in other locations, or green card holders, pilots that we're introducing with sponsorship or through the national interest waiver.
Yeah, and that's really interesting. So many things to unpack there. The first part, man, with the wages, the wage growth is absolutely stunning to see. And I keep sitting back in my little ivory tower and wonder, how sustainable is this? I guess the margins are such that these airlines can really afford to put it forward and pay these pilots a significant amount. It's pretty astounding for me to watch. And I'm sure you over the past 30 years have seen this surprising growth. You've got this financial opportunity. And then you mentioned getting pilots with sponsorship and work visas and things like that. My mind immediately goes to the ultra low cost carriers in the States trying to bring, from what I read, they're bringing Australian pilots over to help supplement. Have you seen some of that as well?
Yes, Australians can get a special visa to come over. And indeed, we are involved in some of that as well with hiring Australians for the American market.
That's so interesting. So with the growth of that, how does your company go about finding these airlines? From finding the airlines, how do you match them with the pilots that are going to be right for them?
Well, A lot of the methods, is direct contact, but people know us from the years that we've been in business anyway, so they tend to sort of welcome our call or contact us to a great extent. There's a need for pilots. Some of the bigger companies have got their own different method of finding people through their websites and one thing or another and work more on a direct basis. But we don't really have too much of a problem. If you call around a few airlines, you'll soon find some that are requiring pilots, and we've got some to offer that are happy to use our services.
Yeah, I guess so. It seems to be everybody I talk to, every pilot hiring manager, whether it's a massive company like American Airlines or Delta, or whether it's a small company or a Part 135 carrier or a Part 91 or 91K, like whether they're huge or small, it seems like everybody is dying to get some pilots because everybody wants to fly. Everybody wants to grow their business. And that's really like the limiting factor. So like with your recruiting in the States, are American pilots able to go and do some of this flying around the world, like China or Africa or Europe, or like is it kind of excluded because of the different international certificate requirements?
No, not at all. In fact, we've been using American pilots on our contracts since the first year that we were in business. And the only restriction is down to certain aviation authorities, national aviation authorities, that may not want to validate foreign licenses. Most of them do. There's no sort of prejudice against American pilots or American licenses by any means. In most countries in the world, an FAA license is recognized and respected. What does need to be done, though, is that sometimes procedure for license validation is such a long-winded one that certain airlines, particularly, for example, in Europe, they would prefer to not do the validations. They can find enough people in Europe with European licenses that they can move from one country to another.
Interesting. So I apologize if I interrupted you there. So you're telling me that the EU is, there's a lot more supply. There's a lot more. They're not quite into spending the level of effort to get pilots certified and transitioned over?
Certainly this year, not so. We have had in the past, if we're talking about American pilots, we have had American pilots validated to work in Europe. But certainly when we're looking at other parts of the world, in Asia, in China, when we had pilots in China for more than 10 years, American pilots working over there. And at the time, the wages in China were very, very high. Now it's a different matter. It's not a problem for Americans to work around the world. The reason actually that there's not quite so many now as there used to be is because they don't need to go to the other side of the world to earn big money, because the biggest money is right on the doorstep.
That is such a good point. Like, I love that point, and that is really fascinating. In my world, I've lived internationally and I've flown all over the world and done a lot. And to me, a romance, I guess, of international flying and living in different parts of the world and raising a family that has an understanding of what the rest of the world is like is so interesting. In the States, we don't get that very much because, we've got a Pacific Ocean, we've got an Atlantic Ocean, and it's a long flight to get to the other side. So very few people travel. And it's just such an interesting opportunity.
I couldn't agree more. And the opportunities that we've had to offer pilots over the years are in such places as Papua New Guinea or Madagascar or Myanmar or Chile or Argentina, Timbuktu. It's literally anywhere in the world. And it's great experience for people, not just a question of the travel, because anybody can get on a flight and go somewhere if they can afford it, but actually to go for a few months or a couple of years and live somewhere and make friends and experience totally different culture. And you're right. And not so many Americans have that or avail themselves of the opportunity, I guess, because life is great over there, isn't it?
I think it's all about your perspective, right? Whether it's great over here or it's not. Either the economy's falling apart or there's politics or there's things, and we're Americans. We can complain about just about anything, even if we're sitting on the beach with our toes in the sand. So How about this? Okay, let's say I wanted to go fly and I probably have somewhere around 3,000 hours and I've got all the certs, right? I got my CFI, I got my instructor, I've got my commercial, I've got my airline transport pilot, all the certificates, right? I also have type ratings in a bunch of different aircraft. But a lot of the people that I work with on a day-to-day basis, they're on the way to those things and they are lower time pilots that maybe have 500 or 1,000 or 1,200 or 1,400, or what are you looking for? A certain kind of bucket of time for a pilot? Is that the thing that you guys are trying to find for your people?
Yeah, I mean, the requirements are determined either by the airline hiring or the aviation authority if we're talking about bringing foreign pilots from one country into another. So it may well be the airline captain, and they've set a standard of 6,000 minimum total time and 1,000 on type or whatever, and a certain recency requirement. That will go for anywhere in the world. But it could also be for an aviation authority to validate a foreign license that they would insist that there is a minimum total time, on type time, currency, and then other such things like ICAO English level 4 and medical and so on and so forth. It's down to the authorities to a great extent. I mean, they will only validate if the foreign pilot meet a certain experience level and certain criteria, which will be probably over and above what they would require for local pilots.
Yeah, that's interesting. It makes sense. You want to keep the skies safe and all of that. When a pilot reaches out to you and is interested and wants to have a conversation about an opportunity that you have, how do you find out if this pilot is going to be a good fit for the organization that you're hiring for?
Depending on sort of where in the world that it is, I mean, obviously we have a chat with him about his general motivation and what he's sort of looking for out of life. I mean, money plays a very big part in that, but it's not all about that. It's about lifestyle. If we send somebody to another country for a couple of years, during that time, they're going to want to come back home and see the family at times. So if there's a sympathetic roster that will allow them to do that, maybe 6 weeks on and 2 weeks off or something like that, would be good. You might find somebody else who says, I don't care about that. I just want to go and live the life, and is totally open about that. In which case, there may be a different job that we would recommend for him or her, of course. There's horses for courses, as we say. I mean, it's really just a question of seeing how they're motivated, to how they're qualified with the usual things, with hours and recency. And then, of course, we want to talk to some people that they know or will have been working for in the past to see how they've made out and what sort of a character they are and how professional and proficient they are as a pilot.
Yeah, that's so cool. Do some of these pilots that you're placing, do they end up, have you heard of any stories of like somebody just kind of settling down and staying and just becoming part of that culture?
Yeah, all sorts, to the point of pilot leaving his wife and children to go on a Nigerian chief and gone completely bush. I mean, there's all sorts of stories. Yeah, I mean, some people just love it. I mean, we've sent people to different places who have met the love of their life, or their whole life or career has been changed by living in a certain place over the years. And as we say, with 30 years and 5,000 pilots and knowing some stories, a good spectrum of stories that you can imagine.
Oh man, I can only imagine that. I want to talk to that Nigerian bush guy like that. I have a friend from Nigeria. Maybe he knows them. I'll reach out. So I'd hazard to guess that you are looking to place pilots for some are shorter contracts, some are longer term. And is that conversation had up front, or do you mostly just try to get people out there to get that experience?
We work from the requirement of the airline generally. So the airline will either require somebody for long term, forever, or it may be that they just need them for the summer season because there's an increase in demand. So there's a seasonal job. It could be that there's a new aircraft type coming in that's sending some of their own pilots away to get trained and they need some cover during that time. It could be as simple as there's a ferry flight and the pilots are just required for a few days. So, I mean, we'll cater for all of it according to what the requirement is going to be.
Let me ask you this. If I am over the age of 65 and I'm forced to retire in the United States because I was flying for any 121 carrier and I'm forced to retire, but I want to keep flying because I'm in great shape, I've got a great mental acuity, and I'm just excited about flying. Is there an opportunity for a person like that?
It's really down to whether the airlines or the private operators are willing to hire. The airlines almost certainly won't be. Some private operators are able to have pilots over 65, but the vast majority that we deal with, once they've got to that stage, then go to take a job as a simulator instructor or in management or some sort of ground-based job.
Interesting. They always get into management and then they cross their arms and like give angry scowls at people. That's
unfortunately not many pilots like flying a desk.
It's true. Maybe that's why everybody's in a bad mood when you go into the office. That's a good point. You got to get into the sky. You need some vitamin D from the sun and you got to feel good about what you're doing. That's a really good point.
That's true.
So, David, if a pilot's listening and they're thinking, man, this is so cool and this is something I am interested in, how do they reach out and find you?
Right. Okay. Well, they can go onto our website, which is www.brookfieldav.com, and you'll find all of the jobs we've got available on there, both for pilots and for engineers and for cadets. There's training opportunities there as well. There's also some additional things that we have: medical insurance, coaching training, psychometric training, and different services that might be of interest to pilots. Generally, it can all be found on there. And they can always give us a call as well. 44-1372-747-044.
Awesome. And I'm going to actually take all of that and put it in the show notes so you can just click on it and have it right at your fingertips. I also have a lot of companies, the leaders of organizations in the States that listen to this. So if you are at an airline and you are looking for pilots and you want to reach out to David, I encourage you to do so because he is the one that keeps them in his bucket there. So go pick yourself out some awesome pilots over at Brookfield and they will happily chat with you. David, I really appreciate this conversation. Thank you for giving us all that value and the information that is really helpful to help broaden our perspective and know that it's not just our small little part of the world that's available to us. It's much broader than that. Thank you for being here.
Anytime, Nick. It's been a pleasure.
Hey, before I let you go, I need to mention one thing because a lot of people are asking me, can you do anything? Can you help me with this? And the answer is yes. At Spitfire Elite, we will make more millionaires this year than Major League Baseball will make in the next 5 years. Our company actually does this. It's called Spitfire Elite Interview Consulting. And you can find us over at spitfireelite.com. Our clients, they call us the easy button for interview prep because everything you need to crush your interview is there in one spot. Whether it's application review or interview prep, all of it is covered. We've helped thousands of clients who are now flying at their dream jobs because our coaches gave them the one-on-one feedback that they needed to succeed on the biggest day of their life. The best part of Spitfire is our community. All Spitfire clients will get access to our private chats where they can work with each other and they can work with our coaches and get the latest information on all the airlines. If you'd like to make sure that you are 100% ready to go on your big day, there is only one choice. Everything you need is in one place, and I think it's pretty affordable. You'll have to take a look for yourself. Just go over to spitfireelite.com and check us out. Use the coupon code podcast and it'll save you 10%. And by the way, I will see you on the next episode. The statements made on this show are my own opinions and do not reflect, nor are they under any direction from my employer.